Alright, the audio seems to be working for this one. So this is a VOD review for AlbinoDragoon on Vi. We're just going to do a quick run through here. Our major focus was kind of our early and our mid game, kind of just playing what to do, how to gank, that kind of thing. And then mid-late game, engage. And how to avoid being picked off kind of on our own later in the game. So as far as runes go, the runes you're running are fine. Your skill max is fine. There wasn't anything too crazy about that. Your big focus coming out of spawn, you should always be starting bot side of the map with your bot lane. So that means you're going to be starting blue buff here with your Twitch and your Blitzcrank. That means you're going to be doing bottom buff, wolves, top buff, and then hopefully looking for some level 3 map pressure around here. And so that's going to be putting you top side of the map level 3, which means you probably are going to have a contested fight on top side somewhere, potentially in Scuttle, potentially matching a level 3 gank top side against a Skarner. So you just kind of have to keep your matchups kind of in your head. Do you win the 1v1s against enemy jungler? Do you guys win 2v2? A lot of it's just a lot about kind of thinking about what kind of crowd control they have versus what you have. So nothing too crazy is going on here. You ward your top side to kind of protect it a little bit. I'd like you to keep a hold to the ward just to like make sure to ward up for cheese, but other than that, you know, not a big deal either way. So when you start grabbing your red, you really want to start looking at the map to kind of see what's available, see who's overextended. You really want to look at top and mid lane, right? Mid lane really shoved in right now. Your top lane right about dead center of the lane. So top lane's kind of your available gank location. Unfortunately, it is with a Nasus, so it makes it a little difficult to gank, but not the end of the world. If you want to buy a little time when you come for these level 3 ganks, right around 240 is normally when they hit. You can always come and look for Scuttle or look to kind of push aggressive vision in over on this side of the map. And just kind of like, buy time, wait to see if any lanes become a little more available to gank or not. The one big thing I had here was you use your Q, which is basically your big form of gap close or escape. And so when you blow your Q like this on Scuttle, right, the enemy jungle, a lot of times we just said, you know, a pretty standard clear is bottom buff, wolves, top buff, into looking for Scuttle, looking for aggressive vision, looking for top lane or mid lane gank. A lot of times this Scuttle can be pretty contested, and so you want to leave, you know, on any champion, even if it's not just Vi, you want to leave that gap close or that ability to get away up. That way you're not in this situation where the enemy jungle kind of rounds that corner and just kind of catches you with your pants down. So you grab Scuttle just fine, and right, we see Udyr all of a sudden not so overextended here, and so generally this gank is just gonna get the flash. That's actually exactly what happens here. You burn his flash here, and something really important to note for win conditions is you don't have to play specifically towards any specific win condition. You don't have to play towards, oh, my team's full AD, we have to camp the AP laner. Oh, my team's super reliant on our Twitch getting disgustingly far ahead, I have to camp for bot. Your goal as a jungler, kind of where you're at right now, should be more about punishing down summoners and attempting to just repeat gank, especially when you manage to pull a lead like this. Because with Udyr having no flash, and you still having your flash up, you can flash Q into him for your first gank, and then once you hit 6, you have more than enough time to get back to top again, and then ultimate again at 6, and then kind of push this tower and try to leverage your top lane lead instead of anything else in the game. So once you do this gank top, right, he backed, you don't have a lot else to do, perfectly fine to come back into your jungle to farm. This needs to be for some sort of goal, though, whether you're looking for double longsword, chilling smite upgrade, Caulfield's Warhammer, right? You need to be looking for some sort of buy here. It needs to not just be any sort of farm that you're going for. And so what ends up happening here is, unfortunately, your mid laner dies because he gets ganked. and then your bot lane ends up dying up here a little later. The only thing you could have done, really, is seen, you know, if we come back here just a little further, you see your Cho'Gath pretty extended. You know, we can go back even a little further. And you can see that your Cho'Gath's really extended. You could potentially communicate just like a back ping with him, or you could come and look to drop your Vision Ward instead of just kind of sitting here and then falling back into your jungle for farm. Because you do have... You did burn your one earlier. Here. So yeah, basically just communication pings here is what you could have done to try to help him. Is really just about it. Because, right, if you look at lanes... What you want to do is what the enemy jungler wants to do. So, like, if you see a heavily overextended mid laner, and that's something that you would want to gank, it's probably the same thing that the enemy jungle wants to do. And so that's something you should attempt to communicate with your team. So, like I said with this Raptor camp, you need to have some sort of buy goal here, and you end up backing an inning Chilling Smite Hunter's Potion, and... Hunter's Potion is generally just like an extra add-on later. It's kind of not something that you want to kind of burn time to get extra farm to just grab. And then so here, enemy jungler ganks bot, and then they end up taking bot tower. It's kind of unfortunate, but you actually make the right decision here. You path towards your bot side jungle because that's where your jungle is, that's where your farm is, and so that's where you have to path anyways. But you avoid pathing down here and just suiciding into the 3 enemies, because if there's 3 moderately healthy enemies trying to take your tower, right, unless you're really fed, you don't really have an ability to hold that tower on your own. And so your goal at this point, especially with your bot tower falling here, is kind of just to hit 6 and start utilizing your ult as kind of, right, your ult's really, really good to force ganks and just pick up kills, and that's kind of just where you want to get at this point in the game. Just want to point out that you, again, just kind of use your Q on Scuttle, just kind of almost haphazardly without getting any sort of, you know, really aggressive vision beforehand. This one wasn't as much the end of the world because you have the Scryer's Orb over here you hit, but still, it's just kind of good practice to build. And so when you're in a situation like this where you don't have any farm to really fall back to in your own jungle, because that's going to happen pretty often because the jungle camps take 2 minutes and 15 seconds to respawn, you can look to push aggressive vision into the enemy jungle. Your mid laner's got a pretty good amount of pressure, right? Enemy Akali's under her tower. Not really a lot that she can do to rotate. It'll take a while normally. Raptor camp, super, super easy to take. And so when you look to take this camp, what you need to do is you need to just drop a ward in this brush right here. And that will protect you from any jungler or mid laner trying to rotate from this side over, you know, through mid lane to Raptor camp. And then the mid laner, you can kind of just keep an eye on. If you start seeing him rotating around the wall right here, you can start, you know, beelining out of here. But Raptor camp is generally one of your safest camps to take. And then this ward here, you know the buffs aren't going to be spawning for a bit. You've got the minimap indicator. It just can be used a little more aggressively to control either Raptor camp or Krugs and potentially take them instead of just kind of falling back and just not farming a camp, right? We haven't really farmed a true camp for a little over a minute now because I don't really count Scuttle too much. It's worth a little bit of gold, but basically 0 XP. So we end up starting our buff, and then Skarner comes over here. Something really, really good to point out here. We start our buff. I don't like that you never really ping your team to rotate over here. Is the big one. But we're kind of looking at smite contests here. And that was kind of one of the big things. So as for smite accuracy, that's kind of just, you know, having your mouse here versus having your mouse here. If you've got locked camera, then it's going to make it a lot harder, right? Because the buff's going to be moving. But if you got stationary camera, right, the buff doesn't move very much. And so the enemy jungle shouldn't be accidentally smote too terribly often. Something I really recommend for practice, always, 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 as long as you can do it, is either a Q execute or a Q smite with Vi or a third auto smite with Vi. And so what these do is your Q is your big damage dealer. If you get it charged up, it's going to do 227 plus, you know, how much your smite does. Your smite does 480. And you do have to keep in mind, armor changes a little bit. Blue buff only has 14 armor right now. Very, very low. Dragon's got a little higher at 21. And then Baron has even higher. So you have to keep in mind, generally I like to just cut like 20 to 30% off the top. Just to have like a safe window here. So general assumption, our Q is going to do max charge about 180 damage. Our smite's going to do 480. So we have a good window of about 550, 560 where we could hit both skills at the same time and make it very, very difficult for the enemy jungler to just hit smite and take the buff. And if we play this really slow, that's pretty much exactly what happens. Because you hit the Q and then he throws smite and he gets the buff. And so what you can do to get a little bit better practice at this is every time you're taking a buff, every time you're taking Dragon, every time you're taking Herald, every time you're taking Baron, you make sure to do that 3 combo or the max charge Q combo with Vi. And this works for any champion. Lee Sin's got his execute. Shyvana has not the best, but you can throw your E and then do an auto Q smite just to dump a lot of damage real quick to really just hit that combo. You just really want to throw something to combo together with smite to make it very difficult. And so you just want to practice it all game, every game. That way it's something you automatically do every buff, every dragon, you know, every objective, every time. And that'll help you a lot. As for smite accuracy, again, a lot of it's just practice. That's really going to help you a lot more than anything else. And then, unfortunately, you end up trying to commit to Skarner here when you don't have your Q. And the trick is with Vi, your Q and your ult are incredibly important. Because you're maxing your Q, that is your big damage-dealing skill. So when it is down, when you're not using it as a combo to basically immediately throw your auto and then another E to proc the Denting Blows passive to get the attack speed to get the armor pen or the armor shred, you end up really either needing to just back off or hopefully, you know, you've basically engaged a fight. Here you really did neither. And so you guys just end up getting picked. So a big priority, again, when you're behind like this, your goal is you want to be 6 at 7 minutes. And so because you're not here right now, you really just kind of have to passive up a little bit and farm. And make sure you hit 6 to get your ult to make it really, really, you know, be able to start using it. Instead of just kind of waiting to hit 6 or just sitting on 6, which is kind of what happens this game. Or sitting on 6, sitting on your ult. You end up sitting on your ult for a very long time here as well. So you get out on map, you know, kind of unfortunate buy. Not really good considering they're pretty snowballed right now. But not the end of the world. Again, like I said, hit 6 and then utilize that level 6 power spike. Utilize that ult. And so what you end up wanting to do here, right, it's almost 9 minutes. And a lot of this is just kind of the two things. It's the death and then the mindless running around without farm that kind of really got you. And that comes from when you don't have any farm available, you either have to look for a gank or look to invade to take camps. You kind of want to avoid this kind of like take scuttle, drop a ward a little bit, and just kind of hang around a little bit and then back off, right? If you're completely out of camps to farm on your side of the map, you either have to be a little more aggressive and farm the enemy jungles or look to, you know, gank a lane. At that point, you were on bot side of mid. So you could have looked for bot or mid. So here we finally hit 6. Udyr, unfortunately, does finally have his flashback up. So we never went back top and punished the no flash, which is really unfortunate. And right, at this point, we have finally hit our 6. So we either want to look for top lane or we want to look for some sort of isolated target. At this point in the game, because you're not very far ahead, you are very squishy. It's going to be very hard unless someone steps really, really far forward. Or unless the person is isolated, for you to really just kind of pick someone with the ult. So you kind of start fishing for mid here. But, right, your team's behind. They're grouped up. It's very hard for you to ult at this point in the game on any singular target in that ball. Because what's going to happen is you're going to ult in. And quite possibly they're just going to drag you deeper and then kill you. Kind of isolated. So you end up farming out here a little more. Again, we're prioritizing scuttles a little at this late in the game. And then what we notice here is if we look top side of the map, your team has started grouping. Right? Your team hits Scryer. You get a ton of information right here that the enemy team is doing Herald. And your entire team is grouped up here. And I know you want to prioritize farm. That's okay. But the second you see this happening, you really have to try to start rotating to your team. As long as they're not all the way on top side of the map, or even better, taking wolves real quick and then rotating back towards your team, because all that happens here a lot of times at low elo is they saw you grouped here not but 15-20 seconds ago, so they think in their mind that generally you're still grouped, and so you either need to communicate back ping with them, or what a lot of junglers will do is this raptor camp and this wolf camp is very easy for you to take. So you back off, you take that camp real quick, and then you regroup with your team. And I know this kind of like group situation is a little weird because it's only 10 minutes into the game. Generally, lane phase lasts a little longer, but sometimes you gotta kind of just group because your team is gonna force these grouped fights. And thankfully, your team wins this time. I feel like the enemy team just really, really kind of outplayed themselves here more than anything. They're just so split up in this fight. They're just like kind of clown fiesty. It's just kind of rough. But having you here, if the enemy team plays this fight any better, is just so much better for you guys. Right? Potentially pick up an extra kill up here on the Udyr, or have it a little cleaner. That way your Twitch doesn't get picked from it. So you end up getting the Raptor camp. You are sitting on... Okay, you aren't sitting on vision, so you're good. If you're ever sitting on vision, you invade. Again, bush right here, really good place. And then the bush right here. Again, another really, really good place to drop wards. So again, you're prioritizing more buff. This one is a lot better than this one because this ward up here... Right, our goal is to watch high traffic areas with these wards. So this one's a lot better. And you grouped with your team and then picked a tower up. So, kind of getting there. Like I said, we're still just sitting on our ult. And your ult is just so impactful on Vi. You have to really just cycle it on cooldown is really the general rule of thumb with Vi. If it's up, you really want to try to make sure to use it. And then a big thing here, so this is kind of a reoccurring thing for you. I don't really want to go over it too much more often. So Vi Q, if it's interrupted, gets put on a short cooldown. And what happens a lot is, because I'll play this at a quarter speed, I guarantee you I know like what's going on here. Is you're watching up here because you see the low vein. And you're tunneled up here. And you're completely missing the Skarner right on your butt. And so you kind of just have to be cognizant of kind of what's going on around you as you're looking for these ganks. Because a lot of times you can't get punished right in the early game as well. If you ever are looking for those level 3 ganks, right, you start taking Scuttle, you're pretty sure Scuttle's dead. So you just kind of start watching top, and then the enemy jungle is just going to walks like out of a brush, out of jungle, right up here. And they just kind of are on top of you, and you lose critical moments to be able to react to them. And so that's either watching the minimap, or watching yourself, and so you just kind of have to keep on that. And then your Q does not have to be a full channel Q either, because what happens a lot is you start to channel the Q, and it looks like you really just want a full channel Q before you throw it. Here, unfortunately, Skarner stuns you, right? You start charging it up, you get about halfway, and then Skarner ults you, but you can just quick flick your Q sometimes for just that little bit of distance you need to get away from things. I'm not 100% sure it would have helped you here, but just in general, it's a really good practice to do. And so you get picked, and kind of sort of in a way, you kind of bait Cho'Gath into it as well, which is really unfortunate. So like I said, just kind of got to focus on yourself and where you're at in these kind of fights. So we're going to group again. And another big lesson to learn with Vi, right? Whenever you go in, right, your front line, you generally itemize a little more glass cannon. So you have to be really careful about just getting CC chained when you go in, and that's a lot where your ult comes in as well. You can ult either priority target at the front, just a tank in the front just because you need to cycle damage. Maybe it'll avoid some CC. Ult onto a backline to try to burn some CC duration, right? You're getting ready to get hit by a Morg bind, so you just ult the nearest target to kind of waste the bind time. you know, later in the game, if you're tanky enough, you can kind of eat some damage, some CC, and still at the back line. But because we haven't had the opportunity to itemize any sort of tanky items, you really just have to get that ult off. Because what happens is we're stunned, we're re-stunned, and we're dead. So when we went in, if you are super glass cannon, you are worried about getting blown up, you either have to look for a flanking opportunity or you have to look to flash Q potentially, or just Q into the front line and then hopefully be able to ult the back line. But that also is a little reliant on you being able to kind of one shot combo backliner. Say, all is not terrible. This wasn't the worst outcome possible. You guys do end up picking up a couple kills. You get out on the map and you do just blitz right. You guys had a team fight top. You blitz straight bottom. You pick up Dragon. It's really, really good. You know, it'd be really great if it was like an Infernal or a Mountain, but it's not bad for you guys. So again, you're off on the side here while it looks like your team's getting ready to group up here. And so it is kind of twofold. Your team sees you with them, and they think they can group because they think you're around, and then you kind of leave, and then you don't really ping anything. And so it's a little bit of like them not paying attention, right? You know, it's really unfortunate, but it's also you not communicating with your team that they really need a backup. And you hopefully know in this game state, when you are behind like this, you guys really have to mostly hug towers in order to kind of pull back into the game. You're basically looking for picks to get back. So you end up farming Gromp here, and then you see this disaster going on, and you're kind of just grabbing wolves over here. Which, sure, we kind of need wool. You know, we kind of need as much money as we can possibly get here. But at the same time, it's looking like they might try to force fight soon. And then, you know, you're just over there farming. So, I do believe this is the first instance of you using your ult right here. So, right, we sit our ult for 8.5 minutes. When Blitz finally makes a pick. So, kind of good, kind of bad. We do finally use our ult. Unfortunately, it's super, super late. So these next couple of fights, you guys almost pull back into the game because you get a pretty good fight over here. Nasus fights like a trooper, ends up not getting picked. You guys end up picking up the Braum. You guys come over here. I actually do like that you stop and pick up this huge wave. Or at least part of this huge wave, instead of chasing one dude with your team. I actually really like that. As long as it's not super risky for your team to be chasing. You know, if you know that it's pretty safe for them to chase and that they pretty much got it, and you're not really going to be much help, you don't have your ult, you don't have flash, don't have a ton of CDR, then it's, you know, perfectly fine for you to do this. So this is another big one here. I think this boils down to more of a general map awareness problem. I think what happens is you're getting kind of tunneled on minion waves, or what you're trying to go to farm, or what you're trying to go to gank over what you're trying to do. Because you end up seeing Braum here for actually quite a bit amount of time. You have a pretty long time to react to this guy, and you kind of just don't. You're a little worried about the enemy team just kind of being around here, and you drop this ward, and your immediate reaction should be to start charging up a Q to get away. It takes you a minute to charge up Q, and again, you get like a half charged up Q. This will buy you some distance to get over the wall here towards Twitch. I don't know that it's really going to matter. You know, Udir's pretty fast right now. He's got tier 2 to tier 1. He's got bear stance. You know, fast little guy. So it might not matter. But again, we really want to use, we'd rather get a half charge Q off and used to get a little bit of distance over getting no Q off, getting it stunned, put on CD, and then just dying. Excuse me. So this kind of spells the beginning of the end for you guys. You guys end up, your team ends up kind of over chasing here, which is really unfortunate. Yeah, so you guys end up losing inhib here. Come on. You end up getting back on a map. Your priority here is objectives, grouping, and then getting a level 11. Level 11 power spike isn't crazy good for you, but it's not crazy bad either. This is the one time where I'd really say don't use your ult. Because I understand at its base what you're trying to do here. You're trying to look for a pick, but picking tanky targets is never a very good idea because it is just so very difficult to kill them, right? Like, you're not scared of any sort of Braum damage. What you're scared of is the tankiness of Braum and the CC he offers. And so just ulting him makes it very difficult to pick. Or even if you do ult him, it makes it very difficult to pick just because he's so tanky. And so this kind of ult, when you're looking for this kind of pick, is typically on very squishy targets, very overextended targets. If this is a more glass cannon support like Nami, like Lulu's a little weird in that she's not like super glass cannon, but like a Brand, a Nami, a Soraka, anyone who is very low mobility, who's also pretty squishy, is like fair game here for this kind of ult. It's just tanks that you really kind of don't want to see this kind of ult with. And then this one was just kind of a misread on Udyr. So I want to play this in slow-mo again. On the Udyr. Because he runs in a pretty linear line here. You know, you can kind of try to write it off to the flash here, but he runs in a pretty... Right, he just starts running in a straight line here. And you just kind of overshoot him. It's better to use it to try to, like, force zone him away from your carry over trying to predict a juke in this situation, right? You don't really care if he jukes backward. What you care about is if he gets on your carry. That's exactly what happens here. You guys end up picking him up, I think. Oh no, he just gets away. So, really unfortunate. And then again, we kind of prioritize our red here. And because we prioritize one of our buffs, we do get it this time. Well, it's more prioritizing farm. We prioritize one of our buffs. We prioritize farm while we see the enemy doing things basically literally right next to us, right? We see the enemy team right here, right below you. And you end up trying to finish your red here instead of just getting out. And because you do that, you end up dying here again. And this is kind of the beginning of the end for your team. You guys end up not doing a whole lot more here. They end up taking 2 inhibs. You do end up ulting here, but this is one of those situations where I'd like to see you look for an ult on the Vayne over looking for the Skarner, right? Because again, we talked about trying to focus tanks is just not a fantastic idea. It's gotta be squishy targets. Unless you're fed and you can tear through a tank line, which you're not. It's one of those situations where it would have almost been better. Oh, okay, never mind, you do that. I'm sorry. You did actually ult the Vayne there. But you don't even want to get on the Skarner here. You want to really try to get on this Vayne here. Because hopefully we can get on our hitter with the full charge Q, auto E, right? We hit the ideal combo on Vi, and then we kill him. It's kind of the goal. So it's kind of the end of the game. This one was kind of unfortunate because it's really stompy, really one-sided. So it's hard to tell you one way or the other, you know, exactly what you could have done better. Because really, your whole team did get stomped. But I do want to reiterate kind of this early game. Because I'm okay with everything, you know, the initial level 3 grab. And then coming up top, trying to grab Udyr. You know, you get his flash, it's great. We grab our Krugs, we grab our Raptors. And we end up backing. And it's the decision right here that's always the hardest. Especially after we farm. Because the farming makes sense. It's right here. And so, normally I would tell you not to rotate all the way across the map to look for anything. But we've been, we've been watching Udyr on the minimap. Udyr's generally pretty overextended. It looks like he is not terrible at warding. But this is pretty easy to this is a pretty easy ward to circumvent. Especially if he's up as far as he's been. This is one of those opportunities where you would be able to potentially rotate all the way across the map, right? Because again, we have Udyr flash down, and then we end up just never grabbing it again. And so this would have been one of those avenues to potentially grab it. Like I said, always look for raptor camps when you're invading on this side of the map. Super easy to take. Kali's not super overextended here. So this is one of those ganks that really isn't available here. Bot lane, you know, all the way under tower. So really your only avenue was that raptor camp if you were going to stay on bot side. They end up kind of contesting your blue buff here and killing you guys. Really unfortunate. And then again, we know we're going to get 6 here pretty soon. It's kind of unfortunate with how far behind you are XP wise. And so that means you have to grab Crux here, but it's a better opportunity, right, than looking to get out on the map, grab Scuttle, have to like leech off lane to get level 6. And so you're basically just looking to wait for your top lane to get back to ult the Udyr, potentially. It's kind of weird that he goes for their blue and then backs. And again, I'd almost like to see you, again, just hover this top side, try to get vision control of this top side, and again, look to punish this Udyr at this point, at the moment. And then once your team groups and wins a team fight, you're kind of in the situation where you're basically the least amount of gold on your team because you haven't even participated in a kill, you're just farm at this point. And so you really just have to try to prioritize both farming, getting levels, and then grouping with your team. Anytime your team groups, you want to group with them, and you want to look to peel for carries when you're behind, or look for, there's one fight over here that was really good around mid that kind of highlighted a flank that you could have done. I mean, it's really any of these fights that don't happen back here. It might have been this one back here. Yeah, so these kind of fights you never, like... This was the fight that I was looking for, by the way. These kind of fights, generally you never want to look to head-on fights like this is Vi, right? Because you generally have some location where you can look for some sort of flank. And so what you can do is you can come out of the jungle over here if they ever commit further into tower. Once you have your team around, you can look to come all the way from behind, Q over the wall, and just ult on the carry here. Your goal is less of a frontline peel generally and more of a disruptor. So when you are a little more even on gold, you really want to look to disrupt, you know, from behind, from beside. You don't want to look to kind of come in head on like this because it's very difficult. Like we said, we really want to focus our squishy targets, are really, you know, our AD carry, our AP carry, and potentially like a really glassy support, like we said, like Bran, like Nami, like Soraka, like those kind of supports or any sort of carries. You really want to blindside them and just cause a lot of havoc in the back line whenever you've got some people in the front line to just make a ton of confusion. That's generally your best way to play this kind of thing. So hopefully that helped. If you have any questions, you already messaged me once. I don't know what happened to the last one, so hopefully this one caught all the audio. So hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions, you know where to message me, man. Any feedback would be appreciated. And yeah, hopefully this helped, and you know, hopefully we start climbing, man.